Welcome into Inside the Burrow. Robbie Listella alongside our co-host Kevin Fielder. Could have been a better week last week, but we're coming to you nevertheless with new news, new quarterback potentially this week. So, a lot to talk about, but hopefully you guys are still with us, even though last week wasn't so pretty. Kevin, how's it going?
I mean, again, I wish I was coming to you guys with better circumstances, right? It feels like I'm the bad luck charm of this podcast because it feels like ever since I've been on, they haven't won many games. Uh, but no, I mean, last week sucked. I don't think there's any other way to put it, right? I've been trying to think of another way to put it. There's no other way to put it. The 48-14 loss on the road to UConn sucks.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got the world now on the Yukon Revolution. The Yukon to the Big 12 rumors are riled back up. The Buffalo coach is very high on Yukon now, so we've got that fan base riled up. But unfortunately, the FAU fan base does not feel the same. I can't blame them. That one was tough. I've seen some bad losses, but that one was definitely surprising. So. Lot to fix if you're FAU. Tom Herman back to the drawing board, talked about simplifying the offense this week. That's what Omari Hayes said right off the bat. Tom Herman agrees. And also some changes needed. You know, he mentioned he can't keep asking for his wide receivers or not just wide receivers, his team to adapt if he's not going to be willing to make the change as well. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to mean quarterback, but in this case, that's what it meant. And so, you know, the quarterback room is going to potentially look a little bit different this week. We'll get into that here in just a minute, but want to touch on UConn. That game was just, you know, not what I expected. 400 yards against Army. All right, you know what? That's the first time they've played the option in quite a while. Early in the season, maybe you're figuring some things out, but then you go and play a UConn team. Yes, they have some very talented backs. Darrell Robinson looked really, really good. But 400 yards is a lot. And then late in that game, to be fair, the offense was only able to keep it for, I think it was 19 minutes compared to UConn's 41. So by the end of that game, that defense was gassed, but UConn was putting together some long drives. Now 400 yards twice in this season, Kevin, is it fixable? Is the defense salvageable, or is it just something where they've got to really go back to the drawing board in the offseason?
Everything's fixable in the middle of the season. You can fix things in the middle of the season. Time's running out to fix those things, though. We can't be in week 8 of the season talking about how you need to fix the run defense. Either you fix it now or you don't fix it. The truth is, I was willing to give them a pass for the Army game because, as you mentioned, first time playing the triple, you get a week to prepare for it. Those games are always going to be in the favor of Army, Navy, and Air Force. And so Army took advantage of you. That happens. Don't let it happen again. 2 weeks later, they let it happen again. And UConn, look, to their credit, they played a great game. They had great field position for most of the game. Their defense played really well, and they forced short fields for their offense. But I was looking at this earlier. The average plays per drive for UConn's offense in that game was 9.5.
They were grinding them out.
You can't win football games if the opponent is going to have drives that go 9.5 plays on average. And so is it fixable? Yeah. Do I have the answers as to how to fix it? Truthfully, I don't, because I worry that this is a talent issue at this point. If this is happening twice in 5 games, I worry that it's a talent issue. And I really hope that's not the case, because if it's just a talent thing, that ain't fixable in the middle of the season. You can't. This isn't the NFL. You can't go get free agents off the middle of the street and hope they perform better.
Not yet.
Not yet. Maybe not yet. Judging by how some things have changed over the last few weeks, maybe soon. But I mean, if this is a talent issue, you got to find either new players or you got to fix the scheme and simplify everything to the sense that, maybe I'm not opposed to at this point. But if it's a talent issue, you got to simplify everything and hope that your dudes can be dudes at some point.
Yeah, it was surprising. 17 missed tackles as well. That was the season high. They also had 10 versus Michigan State. So that That's been a bit of an issue, but that they're adapting. Hopefully, this week in practice and finding some new things to click on the defensive side of the ball, because I don't think it's talent. I think it's just been a tough start. They brought in a lot of pieces, especially on the line. So the linebackers were the strength, especially. And so you just gotta hope things start clicking there for them. But on the offensive side of the ball, like you mentioned, UConn having 9 plays per drive. 3 and outs has been the unfortunate staple in every game this season for the FAU offense. They've started every game with a 3 and out. That's just how it goes. And I don't necessarily know if that's too meaningful or if it's really kind of just setting them back. They don't get started on that first drive at all, nothing, and then it just kind of catapults from there. Is that as big of an issue as I think it is, Kevin, or they're just? I mean, is the offense really just have issues all over the board?
I mean, I've always said that those scripted drives, and for anyone who's wondering what I mean by scripted drives, the first about 15 plays for most offenses are scripted the week before. Those are the 15 plays that they, to some degree, feel most confident in, are using to figure out how defenses react to certain things. Those are the drives where you should be getting points. Like, let's just be honest. Those drives heavily favor the offense because the offense you start installing plays, let's say on Wednesday. That means you get 3 days to install 15 plays. And these are the 15 plays that you feel most confident in.
Mm-hmm.
And is it a thing where if you don't score on those first few drives, it's the end of the world, you can't recover? No, absolutely not. But I think the bigger issue of this, right, is, and everyone's going to point to the quarterback, which we'll talk about. I guarantee it. But it's not just the quarterback. It's the running backs. It's the run game. It's the wide receivers. And I know that they've been banged up at the wide receiver position for most of the season, which you can't prepare for. It's the tight ends. I think I've already mentioned it's the O-line. It's play calling. It's everything at this point. There isn't a single position group on that offense right now that I feel confident in saying is a consistent unit in week 5 of the year. I think there's been flashes. Zuberi Mobley scoring 3 touchdowns against FIU. That's a flashing moment. The offensive line, the way they performed against FIU, that's a flash. They had moments in the Army game where things sort of they sustained drives and it looked promising, but right now there's no consistency. And the bigger issue of all of this is you're getting to 3rd down and 8, 3rd down and 9. That's a bad position for any offense, let alone an offense who's, struggling to be consistent. And so if you can't get to 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, 3rd and short, you're not going to win football games. The truth is that's been their biggest issue right now, is that the early downs where you should be having success and you should be able to get to 3rd and shorts and 3rd and mediums that are a lot more manageable, they're not doing. And so it's putting a lot of the brunt of responsibility on the quarterback on 3rd and 8 to make a play. And I don't care who you are. I don't care who your quarterback is. No offense can live on 3rd and 8. The Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL, with the greatest quarterback in the NFL and arguably the most talented quarterback of all time, can't live on 3rd and 8. FAU, with their talent level, can't live on 3rd and 8, and they've got some talented players on offense.
Yeah, no, it's that all of that combined is just created for kind of a bit of a tough start. And now, Omari Hayes, Tom Herman mentioned simplifying the offense. What does that kind of look like? Does it mean eliminating a lot of the motion that we see, a lot of maybe they've run some jet sweep type plays to try to get things going in the pass game or the pass like run game, whatever you want to call it. What does a simplified FAU offense look like?
So I don't know what the terminology that they use is. And so I imagine a lot of it is Kyle Shanahan based, given where Charlie Fry has been in the past. But for the most part, simplifying is putting guardrails on everything, right? Like at some point you have to go back to the basics. You're running basic route concepts. The easiest way to explain it is like, instead of having 20 passing plays and passing concepts, you've got 10 of them. And instead of finding ways to get to 20 different concepts, you've got 10 and you're just getting to them in different ways, right? You're using different formations, you're using motion, You're using different personnel groupings, right? And so I think that's what that is right now, is they're going to go and figure out what are the 10 or whatever. I don't really want to put a number on it because it can vary by team, but what are the passing concepts that you feel most comfortable, and running concepts that you feel most confident that they can execute on Saturdays?
Yeah.
And those are what we're going to do, because FAU's got playmakers. And to some degree, the offense may just be unlocked by getting them the ball. I look at guys like Omari Hayes and Jabari Smith Jr., who had a big catch against UConn, big catch in yards markage, not big catch in terms of affecting the game at all.
Yeah.
But like, you have running backs, CJ Campbell, Zuberi Mobley. You have other wide receivers and tight ends who are dynamic players. I think the easiest way to simplify this offense is to just get the ball in their hands. Let them make plays. That probably hides some of the offensive line issues so far, because the offensive line hasn't been up to par either. But if you just get the ball in those guys' hands and let them make plays, you shouldn't be stopped. South Florida speed is different. Like, I'll tell everyone this before, South Florida speed is different. There's enough South Florida athletes on this team that you should be able to use that speed to your advantage in a simplified offense.
Yep. They have to find ways to get their guys the ball. That's been the problem all season. And even in, types of screenplays, they've just been snuffed out. So it's like they've got to find a way to do that. But also, I feel simplifying the offense kind of also helps. The big move this week and going to an expanded role, a scripted part of the game for Case and Weisman this week. Cam Fancher, has dealt with the finger injury, has struggled. And when an offense struggles at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the quarterback. That's, every quarterback knows that. And so, yes, he's dealt with the finger injury and it's still lingering. Herman mentioned that it's going to go through the bye. And so now against the FCS school, they decide to give Case and Weisman a bit more of an opportunity. And so what should we expect really from Kaysen in this game? The Colorado transfer, he's a 27th ranked dual threat quarterback in 2023. So he has the dual threat ability alongside, Cam. So Cam, the offense isn't going to completely change. It's not going to be as dynamic as Cam. But Kevin, what are we expecting from Kaysen here in his expanded role a little bit?
Yeah. First of all, I'm going to say this. First and foremost, this can't be a thing. You can't be going into week after the bye week trying to do two quarterbacks. Yeah. The bye week needs to be where you figure out who's starting the rest of the year for you. But in the sense of Case and Weisman, I'm excited about this for two reasons in particular. I think his out of structure playmaking ability is probably a little bit more refined compared to Cam Fancher. Fancher has the athleticism. He has the arm talent to make plays out of structure. I think the problem is he tries to do too much at times, and it works. Like, don't get me wrong. There are plays that he makes that no other quarterback in FAU history has ever made, and no quarterback, frankly, most quarterbacks in college football can't make. The issue, right, is that those plays are, the easiest way to put it is they're mirrored with bad plays. And so I think what Kaysen brings you is he gives you not similar athleticism. He's not the same athlete, but he gives you enough athleticism where you don't have to take away some of the quarterback run game stuff that has worked with Fancher. He gives you probably a little bit more in terms of progressed passing. And so it's going to be interesting to see how much of the playbook he's comfortable with. I know he was a little bit of a later addition compared to Fancher and Starks. And so I wonder if that was maybe what played into waiting until now to make a potential quarterback change. Like, I don't know if they thought he knew enough of the playbook, and this is speculation. This is not sourced or anything, but like, I wonder if at some point they didn't know if he knew enough of the playbook to run it. But this is the perfect game to do it. You should be able to beat Wagner with you and I at quarterback, frankly. Like, right, like there's expectations, and the expectation is beating Wagner by a lot of points. And so if there's any game to figure out what Weisman can do in a competitive field, this would be the game to do it. And I am to some degree interested to see how much he actually plays on Saturday.
I am too. I agree with you in the sense that this can't be something the two quarterback system rarely works. I mean, we saw it fizzle out at SMU this season. And so eventually somebody is going to establish themselves. And, I'm sure FAU, in a sense, is hoping that, yes, Kaysen looks good in his stretch on Saturday, but they're hoping that the offense can find their rhythm with Cam. I mean, that's their guy. They don't name him the captain. I'm assuming there's NIL involved. And so it's like, I'm assuming FAU really wants Cam to succeed, and that's why they haven't come out and completely given the job to Kaysen yet, especially also because of the injury. So I feel like there is a bit of room for Cam to still win this job, but you're right. A decision's got to be made fast. And so I'm wondering how much they value this game, what they see in this game. Is you think it's like a tryout almost?
I don't know if it's a tryout.
Yep.
To some degree, like this is what Oklahoma State did with Alan Bowman on Saturday. And I don't know if anyone in FAU first watched that game, right? But they benched Alan Bowman. Let's be clear, they're not benching Alan Bowman in the middle of a game against Utah because they think he's not going to be their starter long term. But to some degree, there's also a sense of like, give a guy an opportunity to take a step back and just calm down. Fancher has not played well. The entire offense hasn't played well. And so I think to some degree, right, like this could even just be a move where it's like, hey, Cam, you just got to take a step back at times, see what's happening, calm down, don't get so frustrated that everything's not working one by one, right? And so it's possible that's the case. It is possible that this is a precursor to a move, right? And like, I get the NIL conversation. I really do. They paid NIL money to bring Cam Fancher in. Tom Herman's not going to keep him the starter for 12 games if he's not playing well. There has never been a school that kept a guy as the starting quarterback for 12 games because of NIL reason if they felt they had a better option in-house. Because ultimately the job of a coach, the job of a coaching staff, and the job of the players on the roster is to still win football games. And so if they think Kaysen Weisman gives them the best chance to win those games, he's going to start. And I think that what this is doing is it's given Weisman an opportunity to play in an actual game setting against another opponent, to go through that process, right? And there's only so much that you can get out of practices where everything is controlled. Every coach is controlling it down to the minute you stop the drill, right? And so like it's difficult to get a sense of like what a guy can do comparatively, and that's why these FCS games can be important for teams, is it allows them to see what player Y or player X can do in an actual game setting. And so it's possible that if he comes out and let's say he hypothetically leads 3 scoring drives, right? Like 3 scoring drives, the offense looks the best it has all season. They're not going to go back to Cam Fancher if Fancher's struggling. And so like, I think this is to some part allowing Fancher to take a step back. And it's a perfect game to let him take a step back. But it's also giving Weisman an opportunity to prove that maybe it's not reopening the competition, right? But at least making it a little bit more challenging to just make this a one-man race.
Yeah, it comes at a time in the season, like you mentioned, it's a pivotal point. So it's a time where they got to figure out something. And that's exactly what Herman said. If what they figure out is Kaysen's looking good out there, that's great. But it's also, can Kaysen kind of make Cam play better by adding that competition factor? So we'll see what kind of happens with the quarterback battle. I'm hoping what happens is that the offense comes out and scores 63 points. Both quarterbacks look really, really good. But we'll see. They're also dealing with injuries at the wide receiver position. Joe Young, he had surgery, or he may be still having surgery on his knee. It's not the ACL Herman mentioned. And then BJ Alexander, EJ Horton also, they hadn't played yet this season. So those are 3 guys that Herman said could have potentially, he doesn't use the term starter really, but he did, didn't put quotations around them, but they would have contributed at the wide receiver position for sure. And so now, Jabari Smith was the guy who played against UConn, stepped up for more snaps, but they still have George Johnson. They still have Caleb Coombs, Marlon Johnson, who all have played a little bit here and rotating how they do. So, but I'm wondering, how much has that really impacted the offense? Because, it's easy just to say the that, Cam hasn't been able to get them the ball, but I wonder if, the connections just have been struggling to form with the way that it's been rotating, or if it's just not worked out.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a chemistry issue. I get that argument. A lot of quarterbacks who I've spoken to say it doesn't matter who I'm throwing the ball to, I got to get them the ball, right? And like you throw to these guys throughout camp, whether it's spring, fall camp, throughout practice, right? Like he's definitely. It's not like Cam Fancher has never thrown the ball to Jabari Smith Jr. Maybe he hasn't thrown the ball as much to Jabari Smith Jr. as opposed to, a Joe Young or a Horton, but like they are still throwing the ball to these guys, and so like that to me, there's not an excuse of chemistry as to why this offense is not in sync, especially because it's week 5. The truth is, like, week 1, you can get away with going, yeah, you know what, we just weren't in sync. It might be chemistry, it might just be rustness. That goes out the window when you start conference play, because at some point you got to be ready to play football, guys. You only get 12 weeks to prove that you're a good football team, and so I guess it's really 14 because of the bye weeks in between. But like, you get 12 games, and so if you aren't ready by week 7 or game 7, game 8. It's no longer a chemistry issue; it's a process issue, and I think that's what led to the comment about simplifying things. Right? Is that this is clearly a process thing, something that is within their processing from staff, from players, from everyone, really. And it's like it's easy to blame the quarterback and the offensive coordinator because they're the most popular people in terms of how an offense runs, but to some other degree, it's not just them; it's everyone. And Tom Herman will tell you this if you ask him. It's everyone. And he's effectively said this. Is like coaching staff takes blame, quarterback takes blame, every player on the offense takes blame because, as I mentioned before, no one's playing well right now. So this isn't a chemistry thing. This is a process thing, and it needs to be fixed.
We shall see. That's what they're hoping to do by sparking the offense a little bit this week. But that kind of brings us into Wagner a little bit. Wagner, they're scrappy FCS squad. They're coming in at 2-2. It's kind of tough to tell how they'll compete against an FBS team. They have really solid running backs. But rather than speculate what we'll see from them a little bit, what do we want to see from FAU against Wagner in this game, whether it's the offense, whether it's Kason Weisman? What do we want to see from the Owls in this one?
I want you to blow them out. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I want you to not – this shouldn't even be a game. And this is not disrespect towards Wagner, who have historically been a solid FCS program. But FAU needs a win that is not close. They need a win that is not tight, that is not a competition late in the game, right? Like, there should not be a point in the second half of this game where you feel as a fan slightly uncomfortable about where this game is heading. FAU is more talented than Wagner. They have more guys, more dudes than Wagner. From the sense of like Weisman / Fancher, I want to see which one operates the offense better in structure. They can both make plays out of structure. That's not this should not be a deciding factor. So I want to see which one of them operates the game better in structure. I want to see who steps up next to them, though. More than anything, I want to see who's the wide receiver, who's the tight end, who's the running back that's going to step up and make plays. Because that's also what you need. You need someone who's going to step up and make a play as well. Defensively, this is going to be a good test for them because they do have 2 running backs who are very solid players. And there are 2 players that I've watched before and went, they could probably be group of 5 talent. Maybe not like American group of 5, but Mountain West, MAC kind of talent. Like, they've got some guys. And I know that they really do like Ricky Spurrill. I probably butchered that last name, but he's been their sort of leading rusher, and I'd like to see FAU just dominate this game in the trenches. And maybe that's wishful thinking, but I think at some point you just need a game that necessarily is a get-right game. You need a game where you can just get it right. And this is the perfect game. It comes at a perfect time for FAU, and just truthfully, I'd like to see this game not even be close for the second half at least. If it's a 10-point game the first half, those things happen depending on how many drives you get, but you should be winning this game by 20 plus points.
That's definitely what the fan base wants to see. You mentioned the running backs, and Herman mentioned they're probably just going to run inside zone based off the UConn film and run it right up the middle, and that's probably not too far off. Both of their main backs, Ricky Spruill, as he mentioned, and Sekou Kamau, both averaging 6 yards a carry, and so that's going to be, whether or not what that's going to come down to is whether their offensive line can still create push has that they've been able to do at the FCS level this season. If they can push that up just a little bit in terms of against FAU, they might be able to run the ball. And in terms of, their pass game kind of plays into a bit of a favor of FAU's defense. The DBs still are a strength of the FAU defense. That's still a positive. And Wagner has thrown to Jalen Benelli. They've targeted him 32 times this season. Next closest on the team is 12. So that's going to be their go-to guy. He's an outside receiver. He's only 5'10". But he's contributed this season still for Wagner. And so, put Bugs Brown on him, and hopefully they're going to force him to run the ball. And if you can stop him, exactly, blow him out. Because the fans need to see something. The team needs to see something. Everyone really needs to see something at this point. And they saw it versus FIU. And then it just kind of collapsed back to pre-Army levels against Connecticut. So this is another chance to kind of show out. But we kind of talked about the two quarterback system. Is it something in this game where if FAU does struggle early on in that game, is this a place where we could potentially see them decide to go with one quarterback by the end of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule out that this is a possibility where if a quarterback is the hot hand, they just ride with it, right? I know coaches like to have these things planned out to some degree, like the first quarterback will play the first 2 drives, and then the next quarterback will play the next 2 drives or whatever, right? And that gives you an opportunity to let them get in some type of rhythm, right? Because it's never a good idea to have them just switch off drives because, I mean, that's just not fair to either of them. They need an opportunity to get into some kind of rhythm. But, I mean, it would not shock me if this game gets tight or is just not great, but one quarterback is looking better than the other. It wouldn't shock me if that's just a situation of like once they get into halftime, it's like, enough with this two drive thing or whatever, right? Like, we're not swapping this in the second half. Whoever is the hot hand is going to be the guy we go with, right? And so I think that's something that's more feel than anything. Like, how does each quarterback feel in the offense? And do you feel like you need to keep this going? But I think, as we mentioned, right, you can't keep this going for long term. You can keep it going for one game against Wagner, but after bye week, you have to know who's the hot hand and who you're going to ride with.
Yeah, and so kind of after the bye week, comes North Texas. Looking at the end of this season here, kind of after Wagner, they have a bye week here in between. Then they come out, they play North Texas at home. Then they got to go on the road and play UTSA. UTSA is quietly starting to turn their season around a little bit. They struggled out of the gates, but they got a big matchup this week, and they could be hot coming into that matchup on the 19th. Then another bye week after that. So if things don't work out versus North Texas and UTSA, the season gets kind of grim at that point. That would really be kind of grim. So they got to. That would set them at 5 losses if they were to lose both of those games. So that bye week after that will be critical. Hopefully they're not at that point. And then they come out, they play USF, East Carolina, another tough 2-game stretch. And then they go Temple, Charlotte, Tulsa to end the season. To me, they can get to bowl eligibility still. It's still well within range. 6-6, potentially 7-5 if things go, as they want down this stretch. But Kevin, what does success look like for FAU down the rest of this season?
I've always said success should be determined based off if you make a bowl game or not, and I'm not going away from that. The end of the season stretch after the USF game, USF looks like a good football team. I know they've had a couple of tough games here recently, especially against Miami over the weekend, but you play Eastern Carolina, you play Temple, you play Tulsa, you play Charlotte. I've watched all 4 of those teams. They are all winnable games. And you may need to win all 4 of them. There may be a situation where you need to win all 4 of them to get to 6-6 because the Wagner game, implying they win it, would count
Mm-hmm.
as one of your 6 wins. And so you
Got
may only
two.
need to win those 4 to make bowl eligibility. I would like to not this. I would like for this to not be a situation where you get to the final week of the season against Charlotte and you have to try and prove that you can make a bowl game, right? Like,
No, it's going to be even more grim. Charlotte is the second to last at home. They play on the road in Tulsa last game of the
yes,
season.
it's
That's the
Tulsa
last
last.
place you want to be.
You do not want to go into the final week of the season having to win a game to make a bowl game. That's every team's sort of worst nightmare,
Yep.
because that's a stressful situation that no one wants to be in. And FAU has been in that situation a few times over the last few years. Ideally, they can steal to some degree a game against North Texas or UTSA, get into the bye week with a little bit of momentum, right? Like, I think if you win one of those games and you look good in both those games, the season doesn't look as bad,
Yeah.
because yeah, would you like the game against UConn and Army back? Would you like to win the game against Michigan State where you were, down to the final drive and had a chance to win it?
Yep.
Sure. But also, if you beat North Texas, who have looked solid to start the year, they got blown out by Texas Tech, but to some degree expected. And UTSA, who, as you mentioned, is beginning to pick it up. I don't know if anyone was ever concerned that they'd pick it up, but you'd like to look good in both those games and win one, because you don't want to be going into the last week of the season having to win the game to clinch bowl eligibility. That you'd rather that be a game where it's 7-5/6-6, not 5-7 or 6-6.
Yeah, I think the start to the season definitely has been rough, but it's still all attainable, and that's also why this week was important to try to see what they can get out of Kaysen, see if that's the best path to success. Because they'll have a break this week where they can figure out more things, but it's go time from there. And that North Texas game, even though North Texas has been the better one than UTSA, the Alamo Dome is not, it may not be the most hostile environment, but it's still not an easy place to go in and win. And so you'd rather, if you're FAU, win that North Texas game, then you're going into that UTSA game with a bit of momentum. But neither of those are guarantees at the moment. We got to see what this offense looks like this week against Wagner first. Final Wagner prediction here before we let you guys go. For me, I was dead wrong about UConn. I thought that game they would have won. I did say it probably would have been close, but didn't go as I expected. I'm not by any means gonna hop on the doom bandwagon and think FAU is going to lose to Wagner this week. I do think there's a chance that this game is absolutely close. Their run game is good for the FCS level. They have a veteran coach in Tom Masella. And so I think in the beginning it is close, maybe, while they're trying to figure out the quarterback situation. What I really want to see in this game, just for a peace of mind type of thing, I want to see them get past that 3-and-out on the first drive of the game. Let's just even if they end up punting, let's move it down the field a little bit on that first drive of the game. Show something early against a defense that shouldn't be able to create a lot of pressure against the quarterback. So I am going to go. I'm going to take FAU in this game. I'm going to say it's 10 points or less at the halftime, but I think FAU wins this game by 3 to 4 scores. Give me 38-14 FAU. They win the game.
I'm going to go 40-10. I don't think this game should be close at all. And there will certainly be moments where it's a 1 or 2 score game, just because it's almost impossible to jump out to a 21-0 lead in any football game, right? But this should be a game that you win by 20 plus points with ease.
We shall see what happens. Kaysen Weisman, we'll see what we see from him game. We'll see what we see from Cam. We'll see what we'll see from the offense as a whole. Hopefully, an FIU-esque performance. Maybe let's get that run game going. That we didn't mention that a ton, but that's going to be an important part of this offense in this game as well. So we'll see who's the hot-handed QB. Maybe it's a running back that leads the charge once again. We shall see. FAU versus Wagner. It's family weekend in Boca. A lot of parents should be in town. It is also AJ and Big Justice Day, so make sure to get out there and bring the family and have a good time because I think the storm and stuff will be out of the way. So family weekend, enjoy it at FAU, and hopefully next week we come to you guys with better vibes than this week. But for Kevin Fielder, I'm Robbie LaStella, and this was Inside the Burrow. We'll see you next time.